Well, here we are in the town of Harlowton, Montana at the Mussel Shell Museum. One of the last stops on the dinosaur trail. Let's go in and see what this is all about. And here's the front entrance to the museum.
Welcome to the Upper Mussel Shell Museum in Harlowton, Montana. My name is Tim Busby. I'm the curator. I've been here about 3 years. Our museum is a community museum. It is part of the Upper Mussel Shell Historical Society, so it's not operated by the city or county. It is a private organization, but as we reflect the history of Mussel Shell County, from all the way from the Devonian period to modern times, it is kind of the attic for Mussel Shell County and all the inhabitants and citizens that have lived here. We have a kind of an eclectic collection, but it is all, for the most part, real, and we're very proud of what we do here. Over here we have part of the Grinvall collection, which is swords and knives. Barney Grinvall was our Justice of the Peace, and he collected all over the world. The saber there was used in a battle at the Khyber Pass on November 23rd in 1738. We also have, you'll see, swords from World War I. This is a German or Danish bayonet. This here is an Indonesian sword. The saber there is from the East India Company that was in India in 1835. Most of the stone that was used to quarry for this building and several others along Main Street came from a quarry that's just over the edge of the hill here, about 50 yards away. And one of the man who did a lot of the masonry work was an immigrant named August Pullman. And his name is on that cornerstone there from 1921 when he built a building north of here on the corner of the street where now the electric engine from the Milwaukee Road stands. And you'll also see here just some general Montana history. Those are the Michigan style snowshoe like I was talking about earlier. They were used by Gene Tierney, who was an author and the game warden here from the 50s through the 70s, 1950s through the 70s. He wrote the book Cry of the Hunted, which is available here. It's a limited production book. We do have some, but not a lot of copies. And then once they're gone, because they're not doing another run of them. But then we have papers with this gentleman that the picture is ex-Beadler. He was a U.S. Marshal here in Montana for a while. He was also the hangman and executioner for the vigilantes when they hung Sheriff Henry Plummer over in Bannock, and he was instrumental in breaking up the outlaw gangs in the mining camps. Okay, this was used because they didn't have a lot of nails, so they used pegs. So in order to join together joints or whatever, you would use this to drill your hole. As you can see, there's an auger here that's turning the drill bit, and there's also a screw on the sides, on the other side, so that it moves down. So it was an early drill press. You'll see here we also have a selection of tools that are hand carved. The pitchforks, the rakes, the shovel. People did whatever they could to save money and get the tools they needed to do their jobs. Up on top you'll see a cradle. That is a scythe, which is a blade used to cut grain, and then the light frame would catch the grain so that when you made your cut, it would collect up a bundle of grain. You'd dump it on the ground and move on to your next cut, and somebody else had to come and tie the bundle up, and they would make shocks and let the grain dry, and then they would have to come around later and pitchfork the sheaves up onto the wagon and take them into the barn for storage. And then as they would harvest it, they would take a flail, which is a long pole with a short piece of chain or leather and another about 2-foot section of pole on top of it, and they would lay the grain out on a canvas and then beat the snot out of it to get the grain off. This is a hand-plated bridle that was used in the area for the horses. Cowhands would sit in these small cabins all winter long going nuts, and they needed something to do, so they would make tack like bridles, lariats, halters, hackamores, all that. This is the Charlie Russell rifle. He was our famous artist. The rifle, there's a picture of a deer on it. He scratched that in 1914. That is an original Russell. Him and a friend would go hunting, and one day the friend's son came along and they separated, and the friend heard a noise in some bushes and he took a sound shot, and when he went down there he killed his son, so he wrapped that rifle around a tree, which is why the barrel is bent. Russell went over and picked up the rifle and scratched that picture on it, and it's the only time he was ever known to work in steel. Russell has murals in the Montana State Capitol, and he has his own museum in Great Falls. But he was an alcoholic when he lived here, and he would stay up at the bar in Utica, which is north of here. And he would sit at the bar and draw portraits of the patrons on napkins so they'd buy him drinks. And the bar at Utica still has 3 full-sized Russell portraits that are worth millions that he used to pay for his bar tab. Right here we have the Bill Miller collection. He likes Winchesters, but he has a nice selection of them here. Gus Breeding was a local cowhand. In fact, his grandson is now one of the top PRCA rodeo contestants, but this was his year. This is another version of settlers, how they lived. They actually took a rail car. You can see others in the background over there on the right. But they took the rail car and made it into a cabin, and you can see they put tar paper over it to insulate it. On the back side here, you'll see a selection of a buck saw, which was used to cut your firewood, and then some of the posters and that were used to entice settlers to come to this area on the Milwaukee Road. The railroads were all very involved in getting people to move here, because the more people that were here, the more business they had. As an aside, this trunk came from the Graves Hotel as well, but the interesting part is this buffalo skull on top. The last wild herd of buffalo was killed in Wheatland County in 1883 by the Pendo Reel, and this skull is actually quite likely part of that last herd. And then right here we have a couple of traps that were used in the area to combat predators that killed a lot of our livestock. This is a wolf trap up on top of here, and then down here is a grizzly trap. And as you can see, it's very large and powerful. You'll notice it has double springs on one side to hold it, because grizzlies are very powerful animals. And because the grizzlies were so powerful, the trap couldn't be connected to a stake or a tree or something like that, because the grizzlies would rip it out of the ground or dig it up. So they would use a large grappling hook as a drag, so that the bear, as he moved along, would catch stuff and it would wear him down, and so they could catch up with him and then finish him off with rifles. There are grizzlies still here in the county. They're moving back into the Little Belt and the Snowies both. And these are a couple of pictures of the Graves Hotel, which was next door to us, which burned down in February. This picture is from the 1940s. And then up here is an artist's rendition of the same building.
Now let's go upstairs to the second floor. And here we entered the second floor of the museum. Lots of military history up here. Civil War on. Some examples of living in the frontier here. These have all been donated by actual people who have had generations living in this area. Old keys and hooks. The library. Another examples here where you can walk in. Toys, clothes. Bathrooms. Even smells like it came from that time period. Old sewing machine. This is an example of what the apartment had in it upstairs for people to live and enjoy. Well, that takes me back. Yeah. Kitchen area. Cupboards. This is what living back here was like not too long ago. There were several apartments like this on the second floor of this building. This is apartment number 7. And these are, looks like old bullets, collection of. Here we have this, where you go up and get your money. Apartment number 10. And who used to live here. Back then, this was living well. Someone's old wedding dress. 1945. The war had ended. People were starting to get their lives back together, build families. Oh, here's an old sheepherder's wagon. Ooh, scared the heck out of me there. I thought it was one of my dogs. A border collie or a heeler. Stove. Everything they needed. I could stay here for hours, but I got the girls in the RV and we're still heading on to our stop tonight. So with that being said, the girls and I wish you happy trails and woof woof.